A man who has refused every offer of power his civilization can make is walking toward the most powerful man in China. He is carrying nothing. The year is 140 BCE. The imperial palace of Chang'an blazes with lamplight at the edge of midnight. Emperor Wu of Han, 20 years old, newly crowned, already convinced he will be the greatest ruler China has ever seen, cannot sleep. He is reading, and what he is reading has stopped him cold. A single line attributed to a man he has never heard of. A hermit, a nobody, a wanderer who lived and died in the mountains outside the capital without title, without land, without disciples, without leaving so much as a proper name behind. The line reads, "The ruler who rules without ruling. 10,000 things accomplish themselves." Outside, 1,000 officials wait for his signature. 2 wars simmer on the northern border. The treasury is stretched thin from his father's campaigns. There is no shortage of things that require his immediate, decisive action. And yet, Fang, whoever he was, had written something that made the emperor feel for a single strange moment that every one of those officials, those wars, those decisions, might handle themselves better without him. That idea was dangerous. That idea was, by any rational standard, absurd. But the emperor couldn't put the scroll down. He sent for this man 3 times, and each time Fang declined. What finally got Fang to walk through those palace gates, and what he said when he arrived, changed the course of Chinese thought. And it will change how you think about your own power, your own work, and your own impossible compulsion to keep pushing, long after you should have stopped. I'm Andrew, and this is Daily Tao Wisdom, where we go back to the source. Not the quotas on Instagram, not the self-help repackaging. The actual stories, the actual figures, the actual wisdom, and what it means for your life right now. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Fang, a man history barely remembers, may have done more to shape Chinese civilization than a dozen emperors whose names fill every textbook. And you'll understand why he then vanished. On purpose, at the moment of his greatest influence. That choice, what it meant, why he made it, and what it teaches us today, is what this video is about. The world Fang refused to understand. Fang, you first have to understand what he walked away from. China in the 2nd century BCE was a civilization at peak velocity. The Han dynasty had just consolidated power after centuries of war. Cities were growing. Roads were being cut across mountains. Trade was expanding westward along what would later become the Silk Road. The air in Chang'an smelled of ambition, sawdust from new construction, ink from government offices hiring scholars by the hundreds. If you had ability, real ability, there was no better time in Chinese history to be ambitious. Ideas competed the way armies had a generation earlier. Confucians argued for moral government. Legalists argued for iron law. Taoists, a smaller, stranger, more suspicious camp, argued for something that made no sense to anyone else. The radical, counterintuitive, almost offensive idea that the best governance was the least governance. This was not a popular position. The emperor did not want to hear that his empire might run better without him. His advisors did not want to hear that their expertise might be the problem, not the solution. And into this world, noisy, competitive, hungry, brilliant, walked a man who refused to play. Fang. The name means, roughly, where is he? And the historical record suggests this may have been more of a description than a name. He left no formal texts. He founded no school. He trained no disciples. What we know of him comes in fragments, a few references in Han-era records, a single preserved conversation with Emperor Wu, and a body of oral tradition written down centuries after his death. What the fragments agree on: Fang was, by every external measure, a failure. He had been offered a government post 3 times. He refused all 3. He lived in the Zhongnan Mountains, the same range that would later become famous as a refuge for recluses, in a structure that multiple sources describe as barely adequate shelter. He owned nothing that required protecting. He owed nothing to anyone who could command him. By the standards of his era, he was a disgrace to his potential. By his own standard, whatever that was, he was exactly where he meant to be. The tension at the center of Fang's story is this: a man who believed that the highest form of action was non-action, and who was about to be summoned to demonstrate that belief to the most powerful person in China. If he was right, if Wu Wei was real, not just poetry, the demonstration would have to be flawless. If he was wrong, it would cost him everything. Emperor Wu of Han, known to history as Wu Di, the martial emperor, was, by any honest accounting, a man of extraordinary gifts and extraordinary appetites. He took the throne at 16. By 30, he had launched military campaigns that pushed China's borders further than they had ever been. He built the Imperial University. He standardized coinage. He reformed agriculture. He was the kind of leader who made other leaders feel lazy by comparison. He also, by his own admission late in life, made nearly every major decision of his reign through sheer force of will, and left behind a trail of exhausted officials, drained treasuries, and a population that had been squeezed hard in the name of greatness. He was, in the language of Taoism, entirely yang. All action, all decision, all force, no rest, no receptivity, no softness. And at 20, before the wars, before the campaigns, before the full weight of empire settled on him, he had stumbled across a fragment of something that whispered there might be another way. He sent for Fang. Or rather, he sent officials to request Fang's presence. Fang declined. The emperor sent again with a formal invitation. Fang declined again. The third time, the emperor sent his own personal envoy with an imperial decree. Fang wrote back, politely, with evident good humor, that he would come to the palace when the emperor could explain in writing what question he actually wanted answered. The court was scandalized. This was not how one addressed the Son of Heaven. The emperor, to his credit, found it hilarious. He also found it interesting. He sat down and wrote the question himself. If the ruler acts, decisions are made. If the ruler does not act, chaos follows. How, then, can inaction be wisdom? Fang arrived 3 days later, on foot, carrying nothing. Stay with me, because what unfolds over the next 3 days in that palace is the clearest demonstration of Wu Wei ever recorded. And by the time we get there, you'll understand why it still applies to the decision sitting on your desk right now. The meeting between Fang and Emperor Wu is one of the more remarkable documented encounters in early Chinese intellectual history, and one of the least discussed. It lasted 3 days. The emperor canceled everything else. Advisors who had been waiting weeks for audiences were turned away. The conversation, preserved in fragments across at least 4 different later sources, circled around a single distinction that Fang kept returning to in different forms from different angles until the emperor finally saw it. The distinction was this: the difference between doing nothing and doing without forcing. "Your Majesty," Fang reportedly began, "let me ask you something. When you decide the grain prices must fall, does your decree make them fall?" The emperor said yes. His officials enforced the decree. Prices fell. And if I were to tell you that there was a man, one man, with no office, no decree, no officials, who could make grain prices fall further and keep them lower and produce less suffering in the process, would you want to know how? Of course. He would do it by doing nothing. He would simply remove the barriers that prevent grain from flowing where it naturally wants to go. The grain moves, the price adjusts. No force is required. The Tao did what the decree could not. The emperor, trained in legalist efficiency, pushed back, but someone had to remove those barriers. That was action. That was governance. That was force. "Yes," Fang said, "and that is exactly where you stopped. You see the removal of barriers as the end of action. I am telling you it is barely the beginning. After the barriers are gone, then what? Does the ruler still stand there pushing? Or does he step back and let the river run?" This is the heart of Wu Wei as Fang understood it, and as Lao Tzu had written it centuries before. Wu Wei does not mean passivity. It does not mean abandonment. It means acting in precise alignment with what a situation actually requires, and then stopping, completely, without attachment to the outcome, without the need to keep pushing simply to feel useful. The emperor was quiet for a long time after that. "You are describing a form of trust," he said finally. "Trust that the system works without my constant intervention." "I am describing something harder than trust," Fang said. "I'm describing the ability to do your work completely, and then release it, to govern fully, and then disappear from the governing. Most men can act. Almost no one can stop. Here is where this lands for you. Think about the last project you truly let go of. The last decision you made, implemented, and then actually stepped away from, without checking constantly, without second-guessing, without inserting yourself back into the process every 48 hours to make sure it was going the way you wanted. If you're honest, probably not recently. Maybe never. We are all Emperor Wu, convinced that the grain prices only fall because we keep watching. On the second day, the conversation shifted. Emperor Wu, who had spent a sleepless night thinking, came back with a harder question. "If Wu Wei is real, show me. Do something without doing it. Here, now, in front of me." Fang said nothing for a very long time. The silence in the imperial audience chamber was, by all accounts, uncomfortable. Officials shifted. The emperor waited. Fang looked out the window. Then Fang said, "Your Majesty, I already have. You have done nothing. Exactly." More silence. "You are testing me," the emperor said. "I am showing you," Fang said. "The proof of Wu Wei cannot be explained. It can only be experienced. You just experienced it. In this silence, you felt something. An impatience, a discomfort, a need for something to happen. That need is the opposite of Wu Wei. What I did, sitting here in stillness, without explaining, without performing, that is as close as I can bring you to it. The experience of waiting for something that never comes and being at peace with that waiting. Most men cannot bear it for 10 seconds. You bore it for several minutes. That is not nothing." The emperor, who had commanded armies, reportedly laughed. "You are the strangest teacher I have ever encountered." "Good," said Fang. "Strange is a sign that the learning is real. When something confirms what you already believed, you haven't learned anything." This is a principle worth sitting with. The moments that feel strange, counterintuitive, uncomfortable, slightly wrong, are often the moments where genuine insight is available. The smooth, satisfying, confirming moments are where we reinforce what we already know. Fang was not trying to make the Emperor comfortable. He was trying to make him capable of stillness. Those are not the same project. Sound familiar? How often do you seek out teachers, books, ideas? Not because they will genuinely challenge you, but because they will confirm the position you already hold. We call this learning. Taoism calls it the closed door. On the third day, Fang told a story. It was not his story. It was old when he told it, drawn from an oral tradition that predates even Zhuangzi's writing. But in his version, it carried a weight that the emperor reportedly found impossible to dismiss. There was a wood carver in the city of Liang, Fang began, who was known throughout the province for the quality of his work. Furniture that never warped, joints that never loosened, objects that lasted for generations. Other craftsmen came from 3 days' travel to watch him work, hoping to learn his method. The method was this: he never started immediately. Before beginning any new piece, he would fast for 3 days. On the first day, he forgot about profit and loss. On the second, he forgot about praise and blame. On the third, he forgot about his hands. By the fourth day, he would enter his workshop in a state that he could not describe and did not try to. He would select his wood, and the wood seemed to select him. He would pick up his tools, and they seemed to pick themselves up. He would work for hours without deciding anything. And at the end, there would be an object, perfect, complete, without error. Fang stopped. "Do you see?" he asked. "I see a man who spent 3 days doing nothing and then made furniture," the emperor said. And Fang noted that he said it not dismissively, but thoughtfully. "You see a man who removed every layer of interference between himself and the work. The greed, gone. The fear of judgment, gone. The self-consciousness of the hands, gone. What remained was skill alone, pure te, inner power without noise, and from that silence, the work emerged. Te, that word deserves a breath. It's often translated as virtue, but that misses it. Ti is the natural power that arises when everything false has been stripped away. The craftsman didn't add anything. He subtracted until only the real thing was left. That's Ti. Can a ruler do this? The emperor asked quietly. A ruler must do this, Fang said. Or the ruler's noise becomes the empire's noise, and 10,000 things suffer from it. This is one of the most precise descriptions of what psychologists now call flow state, the condition of complete absorption where performance exceeds what conscious effort could produce. The woodcarver's fasting was not spiritual theater. It was a removal protocol, clearing out the interference, making space for TE to operate. What would your work look like if you could clear that noise? Not for 3 days, for 3 minutes before you sit down to do something that matters. Most people never find out. He turned down at the end of the 3rd day. Emperor Wu made Fang an offer. It was not a small offer. Grand Counselor, one of the 3 highest positions in the Han imperial government. Direct access to the emperor. Resources to pursue any intellectual or philosophical project he chose. a residence in the capital, a stipend, influence. Fang thanked him. He declined. But why? The emperor pressed. You have demonstrated that your knowledge is real. You could use this position to change things, to teach, to implement what you believe. Fang's answer, preserved in at least 2 independent sources, is worth quoting carefully. This is perhaps the most perfectly Taoist statement ever recorded. Your Majesty mistakes the river for the river's benefit. The river does not choose its banks. It does not plan its course. It does not accept appointments. It flows. Everything I understand comes from having no position to defend, no office to protect, no face to save. The moment I accept your offer, I become a man with something to lose. And a man with something to lose cannot teach Wu Wei. He can only talk about it. The emperor did not argue. According to the records, he sat in silence for a long time. The same kind of silence Fang had demonstrated the day before. Then he said, I think I understand. Fang left the next morning, on foot, carrying nothing. He was never officially seen in Chang'an again. Here is what most people miss about this moment. Fang was not turning down power. He was protecting his capacity to embody what he taught. He understood something that very few people in any era understand, that the moment you institutionalize wisdom, you compromise it, that the moment you give the river a title and a salary, it stops being a river and starts being a canal. Canals are useful. They are also completely different from rivers. Think about the mentors, teachers, or wise people in your own life who have retained something rare, a quality of presence, a clarity of perspective, a freedom from self-interest that most professional experts and credentialed authorities seem to lack. There is usually a reason. They haven't accepted the appointment. They've kept their freedom. They haven't traded their river for a canal. Fang understood the price of acceptance. Most of us accept the offer before we understand what it costs. After Fang left Chang'an, he vanished from the historical record almost entirely. There is one account, probably apocryphal but instructive regardless, of a traveler who encountered an old man in the Zhongnan Mountains approximately 30 years after the imperial meeting. The traveler asked the old man his name. The old man said he didn't have one worth mentioning. The traveler described him to scholars in the next city. The scholars said, "That sounds like Fang." There are no more accounts after that. No death record, no disciples writing about the master's final years, no collected sayings, no grave that anyone marked. He disappeared the way water disappears, not gone, simply redistributed. Returned to the source. This is the part of Fang's story that is easiest to dismiss as romanticization, and hardest to fully dismiss once you sit with it. Because what Fang seems to have understood, what his entire life seems to have been a demonstration of, is that a teaching is most powerful when it doesn't need a teacher anymore. That the highest form of influence leaves no fingerprints. That the Tao which can be pointed at and attributed is already, in some sense, a diminished Tao. He taught the emperor what he could teach. He refused the appointment. He returned to the mountains. He waited out his own legacy. The sage does not strive for fame, Lao Tzu wrote, and so the fame endures. Fang seems to have taken this literally, not as wisdom, as instruction. 2,000 years later, in a video watched by someone who has never heard his name until right now. Fang is still teaching. Think about that. I know what you're thinking. This is beautiful. Fang was extraordinary. The conversation with Emperor Wu is one of the most elegant exchanges in the Taoist tradition, and the concept of vanishing at the height of your influence has a certain romantic power. But you have a presentation on Thursday, a boss who needs deliverables, a team that's waiting for your direction, a client who has been emailing for 3 days. Wu Wei sounds like a luxury for hermits and ancient emperors, not for people with actual responsibilities. Let me offer you 3 very specific, very unsexy, very practical places where Fang's teaching applies right now. The first is what I'd call the completion problem. Most of us are terrible at finishing, not at starting. We are excellent at starting, but at actually completing something and releasing it. We finish a project and immediately second-guess it. We send an email and anxiously monitor whether it was read. We implement a decision and then relitigate it internally for a week. Fang's conversation with the Emperor names this precisely. Almost no one can stop. Wu Wei is not about doing less. It's about having a clean ending, a defined moment when your action is complete and you step back from it. Not forever, just until something actually requires your attention again. The practice. When you finish something today, a task, a conversation, a decision, set a literal endpoint, a moment where you put it down. Not because it doesn't matter, but because compulsive monitoring is not action. It is anxiety wearing action's clothes. The second is the woodcarver principle. Fang's craftsman fasted for 3 days before beginning. You have 3 minutes. Before any important piece of work, a difficult conversation, a creative task, a decision that matters, take 3 deliberate minutes to clear. Not to plan, not to strategize. To remove the interference, the need to impress, the fear of judgment, the self-consciousness that makes your hands clumsy. This is not meditation theater. It is a noise reduction protocol. The work that comes after is categorically different from the work that comes without it. Try it once on something that actually matters and notice what's different. The third is the offer. Fang's refusal of the Grand Counselor position was not self-denial. It was a clarity about what he would become if he accepted. There is an offer in your life right now, maybe a title, a project, a relationship, a commitment that will make you more secure, more visible, more credentialed. And that security will cost you something you haven't fully accounted for. Fang's question is not, is the offer good? His question is, what kind of person do you become after you accept it? And is that person still capable of what you actually care about? That question is worth sitting with longer than the offer itself. I spent several years making that mistake in the opposite direction, turning down the structured path not because I had thought it through, but because I was afraid of commitment. That's not Wu Wei. That's avoidance dressed up as philosophy. Fang didn't refuse the appointment out of fear. He refused it because he had already done the accounting and knew exactly what it would cost. The difference between those 2 things is everything. The modern trap Fang directly counters is not laziness. It's compulsive productivity, the conviction that the value of your presence is measured by your output, your visibility, your constant intervention. We have built entire economies, entire self-identities, around the idea that a person who is not actively doing something is wasting time. Fang lived his entire adult life as a refutation of that idea, and then made his point even more dramatically by vanishing at the moment everyone would have expected him to consolidate his influence. He chose disappearance over legacy. And somehow, 2,000 years later, he has one. If this story is landing, if Fang is making you think about your own relationship to doing, stopping, and disappearing, hit subscribe. We go deep on these forgotten figures every week, the ones history barely remembers, the ones who understood something that the famous ones didn't. And drop a comment. What would you have to give up? What offer would you have to refuse to protect the thing in you that actually matters? I'm genuinely curious what comes up. Go back to Emperor Wu at midnight, reading a scroll. He was 20 years old. He was already one of the most powerful people alive. And he encountered a single sentence from a man nobody remembered. And it stopped him. The ruler who rules without ruling, 10,000 things accomplish themselves. He didn't understand it then. He probably didn't fully understand it after 3 days with Fang. He spent the rest of his life, 54 more years, largely doing the opposite of what Fang taught. Campaigns, expansion, force. He was the martial emperor. He ruled loudly, expensively, and with enormous effect. And yet, late in his reign, in a document called the Luntai Edict, one of the most unusual texts any Chinese emperor ever produced, Wu Di publicly acknowledged that his military campaigns had caused immense suffering, that he had pushed too hard for too long, and that he regretted much of what force had cost. It is one of the only genuine self-critical documents in early Chinese imperial history. Fang's teaching reached him. Late, imperfectly, after enormous damage had already been done, but it reached him. The question Fang never answered, the one he deliberately left open, was not what is Wu Wei. He demonstrated that clearly enough. The question he left open was, how soon can you hear it? Because that, ultimately, is the only variable that matters. The teaching is always available. The river is always running. The woodcarver's workshop is always open. The only question is whether you can quiet yourself enough, long enough, to hear something that doesn't announce itself. Wu Wei is not a technique you master. It is a direction you keep turning toward, every time you finish something and actually put it down. Every time you resist the urge to re-enter a process that is already running. Every time you sit in a silence that wants to be filled, and don't fill it. Those moments are the practice, not the dramatic ones, the ordinary ones. Chop wood, carry water, put it down. See what the 10,000 things do without you. You might be surprised. Now, the distance is smaller than you think.